Let's get going. That's why I was trying to tee you up for your number one immediately, as we have 6.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize I was going right into number one.
Hello and welcome to episode 280 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast, a proud member of the Marketing Podcast Network. Hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host Ian Truscott, managing partner at B2B Tech Advisory, Velocity B, and on this podcast I chat with a band of marketing chums who share their marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. This week, my chum and principal analyst at Cleantech Insiders, Jeff Clark, and I dive back into how to benchmark your marketing budget as we share the greatest hits from 6 industry reports. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back after this word.
We'll be right back
After this word.
When it comes to relevant content, you may have heard Jeff and me talk about the multis on this show. Multi-channel, multi-device, multi-persona, and multi-language. On that last one, let me ask, how confident are you that your content actually connects in every market? You're not sure? Well, it might be time to check out Phrase. In our experience, this stuff used to be hard, but Phrase makes it simple with its industry-leading AI localization platform that helps you deliver content in multiple languages without losing your tone, your message, or your mind. It automates the manual work, slashes review time, and gives you real data on what's working and where. Brands like Uber and Zendesk trust Phrase to scale their content across the globe and get it right every time. If you're serious about reaching more people and driving better results internationally, head over to phrase.com/MPN and take a look. That's phrase.com/MPN.
Are you tired of juggling multiple software tools to manage your agency? Say hello to Deltek Workbook, the ultimate solution for marketing and communication agencies. With Workbook, you can streamline your projects, resources, and finances all in one place. Imagine real-time dashboards and reports giving you full visibility into your projects, people, and financials. Plan your team's capacity weeks in advance to avoid bottlenecks while staying on budget to maximize project margins. Plus, Workbook works perfectly for both agencies and in-house marketing teams looking to boost efficiency and profitability. And here's the best part. At PCI, we're a certified Deltek partner and reseller offering expert implementation, integrations, and ongoing support to ensure your success. Want to see how Deltek Workbook can transform your operations? For a free consultation, visit pci.us/podcast today. That's pci.us/podcast.
Welcome, Ian, to the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thank you
How
very
are
much,
you?
mate. How are you doing?
I am doing well. It's I turned the air conditioning on in my my home office because it's wicked hot outside. It's about
Wicked
90
hot.
degrees, so that's somewhere around
Yeah.
30 Celsius. So it's hot and humid today, and so trying to stay cool and talk to you.
Nice. Oh, hang on. I've just realised someone's just pressing a button and it's like live streaming this thing. So we had that problem last time. No, I'm good. I'm good, thank you, mate. And as we were saying before we hit record, it's wicked hot here too. Although we don't often use the word wicked so much as you do in Massachusetts.
Bloody hot there.
Bloody hot. Yes, very, very hot, very humid. But I think the weather's going to break tomorrow, so we're going to be better. But I am off to España on Friday, so I'll be properly getting into the heat hot. So this is probably a good practice.
Good practice, absolutely. Probably, maybe as I remember when I went for my honeymoon, and we got married in Portland, Maine, and then the honeymoon was going to be in New Mexico. It was in New Mexico, and it was hot and humid and just really sticky in Portland, Maine. And of course, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to the Southwest. It's going to be hot and scorched by the sun. Of course, we get off the plane. It was probably in the 80s. It was much less humidity. And we're like, wow, this is pretty nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully you'll have the same experience.
Exactly. And I just realised that when this goes live, assuming that I get my act together, I'll actually already be in Spain. So our weather report is going to be a bit of a week out. So if anybody's going, what the fuck are they talking about? There's no heat wave here in the UK.
as you looked ahead, the weather is going to be similar. So I think
that's true.
I think we're safe.
That's true. All right. So this week, last week we were interrupted. Interrupted is the wrong word, but Cassie was on last week, and the week before that, we were chatting about budget benchmarking, and we promised to return to the topic, hoping that the listener felt that was something they wanted to hear more
returning to. Give me more.
Yeah. The clamour for more content on budgeting was I couldn't handle it.
This is where you need the applause track. Yeah.
Yeah. The email just came in. But I think what we want to introduce here is some of the resources that we used, that we've used, and in that last discussion, and to dig into not just what we say about what's going on, but what other people are saying about what's going on. So a lot of homework this week, I noticed.
Well, there are a lot of reports.
Yeah. So 6 examples of the reports we reviewed. I'll read them out, and I'll, of course, include them in the show notes. So we looked at a report from Gartner called Marketing Budgets, How Should Your Team Spend in 2024, which was available for download in exchange for your email address. The CMO survey, Spring 2025, with Deloitte Duke. How do you pronounce Fuqua?
Duke Fuqua School of Business.
I got it right. Yeah, and the AMA. We also were looking at a report by Insight Partners, Insight SaaS Marketing Spend Benchmarks, a report from Norwest, which was new to me, but it was a really nice report. And I think I'd encourage people to go look at that in the show notes. And it had some interesting insights, which we'll discuss in a sec. And that was called B2B Sales and Marketing Benchmark Report. We also looked at some stuff from LinkedIn from the end of last year, the B2B Marketing Organization of Tomorrow, which presumably means the marketing organization of today. And they also discussed budget in that report. And also there looks like a really good report from Forrester, their 2025 budget planning guide, which of course you need to be a client to access, but we looked at some blog posts. Yeah, so that's more than just your email address. That's actually good payola. So there are some blog posts that we looked at that I'll share links to those as well. So and as I mentioned, I think we were talking last week that whilst a lot of the good stuff from Gartner and Forrester is behind the paywall, if you do have the budget to get an external perspective, then we are very much in favour of doing that, particularly as a Forrester alumni like you are, Jeff, right?
Yeah, but they won't let me behind the paywall.
Well, the thing is, as well, is I think when we start discussing this, you'll see that really, what gets shared publicly isn't quite of the right fidelity that you're actually going to need in order to do a proper budget benchmarking, which I think we discussed before. And we have ignored our own editorial guidelines, and we will share 3 observations each, making a total of 6.
We're breaking rules.
Which you can hear delights Jeff because he doesn't like my F in 5.
I don't mind.
So where shall we start? What say you, Jeff?
Well, I think one thing is, for those who are listening this week and didn't listen last week. So last week, we're really focused on how to do the apples to apples comparison. If you think your budget is, too high, too low, too good, just right, and trying to get a comparison with a peer set. But the thing is that as I think both of us commented, is we're kind of going through all this data that we're pulling on trends. It is interesting to know what the trends are. And so again, you got to take them with a grain of salt, and you got to think about them in your own situation. And so, what's going on where everybody else may not work for you, but it still is, it is nice to know what the trends are, because there's some interesting things out there that we'll talk about.
Well, let's get going. That's why I was trying to tee you up for your number 1 immediately, as we have 6.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize I was going right into number 1. So number 1 is, or should I let you ask me?
No, it's almost number 1, Jeff.
Okay. Well, so I think this is true for 2 years in a row. Marketing budgets are in decline. And of course, and I made a little note, or are they? Because, there are some surveys which don't quite show that. And I think the Gartner report, I think the Gartner report we're looking at came out at either the end of 2024 or the beginning of 2025. So it is, but it was, trailing data. Did note that they were down the year before, but they were talking about it being down 15%. That's quite a decline. They cover 11 different countries, so it's definitely more international than when you look at the CMO survey, which has a ton of people. I mean, there's a lot of data that they're pulling, but it is U.S. only, and they showed budgets to be up 3%. And you could say, I guess the U.S. may have a rosier outlook than the other 10 countries. It could be this was pulled at the beginning of the year, the end of last year, and certainly we know coming into 2025, once you got past, I think, the inauguration date for the U.S. president, things got, economic outlook started to go down or just be uncertain. So we're not sure, where things are going. So we're just going to say uncertain for now. Probably going to revise them down later, but we're going to wait to do that once the tariffs and the wars and the revised trade agreements start taking hold. And so I mean, it's just, this is kind of a observation because I think people have kind of been in this mode. Marketers need to do more with less, which is a cyclical thing. I actually worked for a company where doing more with, helping other companies do more with less was kind of our mantra. So it's like, I get, I'm used to it. And it's just something that you go through every now and then. And what was interesting about the, the Gartner report is in the highlights that they gave, they were touting to ask them about AI. So they probably think that it's like, your budget's down. So, use AI and talk to us about how you could use AI to be more productive. I would not unload my purse on that yet, personally, but it's certainly something. And there was a couple other data points on AI that I think we may pick up on in a future episode.
Well, not just in a future episode. One of the points that I was going to raise was about the AI thing, because I think it was interesting how AI was treated in each of the different reports. But I'll talk about that in a moment. But I think what's also interesting about examining these things at any level of detail is you then start to query kind of the survey method. So I was wondering whether the CMO survey was more about perception of budget or whether it was actual budget, and it's similar with Gartner. And also, I think, we discussed 2 weeks ago that what is considered marketing budget is often a little bit of a difference, isn't it, between these different reports? So you've got to be very cautious about what you're reading. But I think broadly, apart from the CMO survey, what they are saying that budgets are down, and that was across B2B and B2C, wasn't it?
Absolutely, both of those were across the two. Yeah, and the CMO survey, when you get into the details, does B2B and B2C breakdown and then combined. So it's so it's worth.
Maybe we should have said. Actually, no, because we're a B2B podcast. So maybe we should have a look at the difference between the two at some point, because I thought that was interesting too. And the reason why it's interesting is I think that we in B2B can learn from B2C sometimes. So it might actually be that we should tweak the little, knobs on our marketing budget.
Well, that's actually a good rabbit hole to pick up.
Yeah, maybe.
Later is the what makes B2B different from B2C.
Yeah.
So Ian, what's number 2?
Number 2. Actually, I was thinking that this is almost 1B, and I was going to cheat and still keep 5 effing things because I wanted
that would make
to
7. Oh, I see what you were thinking.
Yeah, I was thinking this is really a bit more of an extension of what you were saying, but I think there's actually more to it than that. So it does make a whole point, really, because I wanted to pull on the thread that you mentioned there of, or are they, as we were just saying, it sits neatly with what we were talking about 2 weeks ago in the benchmarking show, right? Is that you need to be cautious what you're comparing yourself with. But I think broadly, so the Norwest data was what I was looking at. You'd looked at the Gartner stuff, and comparing 2023 to 2024, they found that marketing spend was down, consistent with the Gartner predictions. But and then the CMO survey showed that it was a slight increase. But the significant thing I noticed in the Norwest data was there was a marked difference between small, mid-sized and enterprise companies that they researched, which again sort of made that point about apples to apples that we were talking about, right? Which
Absolutely.
is that, while companies with over $100 million in revenue marketing spend dropped very marginally. I mean, it's a big amount of money, but as a percentage, it's very small. Companies between 50 million and 100 million saw the most significant year-on-year drop of 52%. And weirdly enough, the smaller companies didn't have that same drop. So the middle companies were the ones that suffered. And obviously, we make our own interpretations of the data that we see, right? And you can dig into these reports only so far. But the two things I thought that I picked up from there was, the first one is, again, that apples to apples point that we were making, try and get the best fidelity of data you can that's aligned with yourself. So even in the high level of this, the size of your company makes a significant difference with the benchmark. But the other thing that I read is, what I read into this was that I think in smaller early stage companies, you might be protecting marketing spend more because it's recognized as more critical. And in a big behemoth, then maybe there's more economic resilience in the business, and maybe they can't change so quickly of reducing their budgets or something like that. And they also understand the value of investing in brand when times are tough. Whereas I think mid-sized companies sort of get caught in the middle of those two things. So I thought that was an interesting, I guess, interpretation that I got from that. What do you think of that, Jeff?
Well, I think so. And one of the other things I noticed in the data is they did not go. So they basically say, companies greater than 100 million was their high end. That's true. So 100 million, I mean, then you get to companies that are $500 million, $1 billion, and $2 billion. So they really are talking about everything from the borderline of enterprise down to the startups. And it's really interesting that it's like that slice where, you see such a decrease. And, it also could be because those companies aren't large enough to maybe survive in whatever market they're in. And so therefore they've got to take drastic measures. Whereas if you're smaller or if you're larger, it's like, okay, we can tweak things and still maintain our presence in the market. Certainly I'd be interested, if you get up to the $2 billion US plus, what the numbers would be there. Because I would imagine that typically the change would probably be similar, in a small percentage.
But the overall, regardless of digging into the data, the overall point there, isn't it, is that be very, try and just get the fidelity of comparing your company with the market. So what's your number 3, mate?
Number 3 is there was, Gartner had some trend lines. Now they don't, the way they divide spend up, they have 4 big categories: agencies, paid media, labor, Martech, and of course, and so I was like, well, there's a lot of things that I know of that don't fit into those 3 or 4 categories that I wonder, I don't know, where do you put product marketing? Is that is that just labor, or where do you put where do you put earned media? I mean, earned media is staff time, I guess, but but anyway, in those trend lines, that Martech is decreasing from 29, and this is actually, I should have stated, this is from 2018 to last year. So Martech has been decreasing from 29% of total spend to 23% of total spend. Now we could argue about the whether that's inaccurate to say Martech should be 23% of your total budget, because it depends how you categorize your budget. But the trend is significant, and it is, I think, something that we saw, as I was wrapping up at Forrester, which was the 2020-21, we had started to see that people's investment in marketing technology was starting to be on the decline. And certainly people were doing a better job of assessing what they need. I mean, there had been a big sort of spending spree when you go from, the 2010s into early, this decade. So I think that makes sense, that you'd start to see a decline in spend as people probably just put a finer point on what they really need. Conversely, paid media goes up from 23% to 28%. And that's, digital ads, paid research, pay search, pay social. And this trend was corroborated in the CMO survey as well. And in the CMO survey, they said, the focus is going to be on brand awareness and conversion to sales. And loyalty they had 4 categories. Loyalty and consideration were the other 2 categories. Those are down. Brand awareness and conversion to sales is up. I would tend to say that the conversion to sales is a B2C thing because you don't really have a lot of direct conversion to sales in the B2B market. But certainly the increase in brand awareness, I think, is something, we've talked a lot about, is that, companies have over pivoted to, demand creation, demand generation, however you want to call it, and then at the expense of building awareness. And so it makes total sense to say, particularly in difficult times, companies that spend more on building their brand awareness do better in the long run than companies retrench on brand awareness.
Yeah.
And so that's a couple things I pull away from or I take away from those data points.
Yeah, it's the marketing multiplier, isn't it? As we discussed, everything's more successful when you've got a stronger brand. Absolutely, yeah. I think that what I also thought about this is when looking across the different reports, as you were saying, it's interesting the buckets that different people put stuff in, different industry analysts and observers put stuff into, because, like you say, that's an incredibly broad brush, isn't it? Agencies, paid media, labor, and Martech.
It's like agencies for what? Agencies for data, agencies for creative, agencies for events, agencies for,
or agencies that are doing your paid media.
Yeah.
Does that count as labor? I don't know. So, but that is interesting. I mean, it is interesting that when you sort of pull at those threads and understanding, making these kind of observations or assumptions based on some of this data, and it's quite difficult, isn't it?
So are you ready, Ian, to jump to point number 4?
Yeah. Well, we're only halfway through. It'd be on the home straight if it was only 5 effing things, but all right. Well, this is a fairly quick one, actually, because as I was looking across this, I was thinking about the fact, and I think we've alluded to this, that the budget conversation needs to go hand in hand with goal setting, expectation setting. So as I was looking at all of these reports, I was thinking there's very little reference to the outcome or the output or the goals or whatever. So, I mean, I've got a view that if you give me 4 pence of marketing budget, you're not going to get much great return. But if that's your expectation, that's fantastic. If you give me 4 pence and you expect that I'm going to compete with Adobe, then that's not going to work, right? So to me, I think that there's a nuanced conversation that is missing from many of these reports in terms of setting the expectation of what return you're going to get from that marketing budget, especially when you get reports like Gartner, where it's sort of blobbing them into these operational buckets. That's very hard to ladder that up to any of those sort of goals that we talk about. But in the Norwest data, and I go back to that, and that's a really good report, I was quite alarmed because in the Norwest data, they did refer to the outcome. So and especially if you look at the general trend across all of the reports about declining spend from Gartner and from Forrester and stuff, what they surveyed in the Norwest data is they asked what the expectations are for revenue changes in that same period. So whilst on the one hand, there was a reduction in marketing budget and spend, they all had an expectation, or the majority, let's say, it varied with size of company and where they were and stuff, but the majority expected an increase in revenue, which suggests to me that in those companies, that's going to be a challenge for those CMOs in 2025, because you can't have a reduction in budget and an increase in revenue without something giving in that point, right?
That is to truly do more with less. Do more and get more.
Yeah, and that's that generally was the point that I was getting there, was that was the only report to cover the outcomes of marketing spend, which is what I was saying. You don't really get that in the others, and I think that would be a really interesting, if I was to survey CMOs and have the access that some of these guys have. What were the expectations and goals? How have they changed in line with budget? And I think that would be a really interesting conversation to have. So, very quick one. It was just about expectations management and how that was not really touched on in a lot of these reports.
That's true. And so I remember in Serious Decisions and on into Forrester, we did do a CMO survey every other year where we were talking about, or we were trying to understand what what are the aspirations, challenges? Because it was more, let's inform other CMOs about what, or inform CMOs or clients about what other CMOs are struggling with and what they're trying to accomplish. And it was not, it was separate from the whole budget discussion because that was a different set of, data retrieval. But it certainly, it was interesting to see how things changed over time. That's certainly one of the, ways that I saw, there was more interest in investing in technology, and then it starts to wane, and you could see the shift to digital away from events, those things.
Yeah, I think maybe this was slightly, this is also indicative of the siloed nature of the way these reports are created and collated, right? Is that this one is going to be about budget. So therefore, you don't get that mix. So what's your number 5?
Number 5 is I picked up on from the CMO survey. They went through and asked, what are the biggest challenges? And the biggest challenges had to do, at least I remember conflating them to be about data and analytics. So number 1 was demonstrating the impact of marketing actions on financial outcomes. 64% of the people that they surveyed, this is up 6% from the previous survey, said that was their number 1 challenge. And then focusing data analytics on the most important marketing problems was number 2. 52% had ranked that, and that which again was up another 6.5% from the previous year. And what was interesting as I was going through this, I saw a LinkedIn post from my old colleague Ross Graber at Forrester about he was talking about the demise of performance marketing. He was like, marketing departments are turning to tactical and internal metrics to show, we're more productive, we put out more stuff, we're doing, it's all these things that don't, they have a purpose, but they don't really tell a story about what marketing's impact is on the business. And that's a problem. I think that could arise. So here's, my 2 cents on where that comes from. One is the CMO has done has not done a proper job in communicating the intent of marketing and will have on financial outcomes. So, do I understand the business challenges? Am I setting commensurate goals? Am I aligning resources behind solving these things? Back to your point, am I setting expectations? So, they're struggling to do that, and they're not able to get the message across. And then the second thing is, does the CMO have the skills on the team or have reliable access to the skills to do the work that's required here? Consolidate data, interrogate data, analyze data, to build that story about marketing's impact, and actually probably build the story about where is the company in the market right now, and how strong are we, and how good are we at getting new business, and what are our cost of sales for the new business we're getting. And when my work doing advisory for Serious Decisions and Forrester, it really was a small percentage of marketing teams that were properly resourced in this area. And it's a tough challenge to say, and this could be because maybe CMOs didn't come up through the data side. So they're like, how do I know what are the right skills to have on the team? And, I worked at a company where, the marketing ops, sales ops, corporate planning group, the IT in those days, it was a data warehouse team. We had to work together and, kind of like make sure that we had the information to be able to talk about impacts we were having on the business. And it's, so it's not easy. This is something that I think, relies on people who who understand how to collaborate across, because it's hard to build it all within the team. Usually some of those resources are elsewhere in the company, so you got to really collaborate across the silos to do this job. Right?
I think that the other challenge, of course, is that this sort of inside marketing operational folks, it's hard to justify that budget when budget's being slashed as well, right? Yeah. So, and it's an ironic sort of chicken and egg situation almost, is that you're putting all of your effort into the execution of marketing, into raising demand and doing all the right things, but you don't have enough bandwidth and resources to be able to show the impact that you're making. And that certainly happened to me in the past, where, you know, the team gets shrunk down, and then you realize that everybody's just executing, and that you're neglecting the reporting and all that kind of stuff. And you really have to do that. So yeah, it's a really interesting challenge for sure.
So that's 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let you do the recap when we hit the end, but we got to hit number 6. Ian, that's over to you.
Yes, and we're in extra time.
Are we in stoppage time?
My last observation, the observation I had also is, and also it's just an observation just on podcasts in general, that it's mandatory to mention AI, and you already did. So therefore, I don't need to do it. You know, I mean, we ticked that box. But what I observed was, particularly in the LinkedIn research, and it was the way that AI had been treated across these different reports sort of popped out at me. So particularly in, as I said, the LinkedIn research. So they listed out what are the list of challenges that you have as a B2B CMO, right? And which you can then align up with budget at this topic. And they were reasonable things like growing pipeline, balancing short-term and long-term goals when the business is focused on short-term ROI, and also the thing you just mentioned, which is establishing the right measurements and communicating them. But the weird thing is the second highest priority, so they're all really sensible things, right? Proper goals. But the second highest priority for this year from their research was the goal of implementing AI technology. And I thought this seemed incongruous with the rest of the research, because implementing AI technology is not a goal, right? It's a tool. It's not a specific pain, which I thought was interesting. And of course, we could dive into a rabbit hole about AI that isn't necessarily budget related. But what I also think was interesting as we consider budget, and as I've recently been ranting about AI being free puppies and not free beer, in that it takes work to make these things operational and feed them and make sure they're not, you know, sending emails that, you know, make you look stupid and all that kind of stuff. There's a level of work needed for you to implement AI properly and to train it and all that kind of good stuff. But the CMO survey took a look at the percentage of time being spent on using or testing AI in various marketing disciplines. So they kind of break it right down into this big table. And it's also across various industries. And it seems that, broadly speaking, marketers are spending between 10 and 25% of their time using these tools, which seems like a relevant amount to me, right?
Yeah.
They're, you know, if we were to contrast that with the Gartner costs of headcount, you know, their very broad bucket, you can think, well, I'm spending this amount of money on AI, if you know, and trying to make that work. And but I think there is an important budget point here, because I think we need to put this sort of thing under the column of experimentation, and you need to have that space. So in fact, Forrester refers to experiment with new AI co-workers to support prospects and customers. Well, whether that's something specifically you want to pick up on, I was picking up on the word experiment, right? Because they're suggesting in 2025, but in their budget guide, that you should have this experiment stuff. So my expectation of these reports in the future, so if we were to do this show in a year's time, I don't think AI will be singled out as a line item, right? Because I think it'll be ubiquitous. But I think what AI has taught us, this rapid rise of something we all have to pay attention to, is that when in our budgets, we need some wiggle room for the next thing that comes along and grabs all this attention, right? So it won't be on the scale of AI necessarily, you know, that 10 to 25% of effort. I mean, it sucked the oxygen out of every marketer's room, right? It is, we are obsessed with it right now. But I think we always need to have something in our current budget that says something we don't know yet will need to get resourced. We will need to research into that. So that was my last point, really. It wasn't really about AI. It's more about experimentation, I think.
Yeah. Well, next we'll have to be able to find the space to store and recharge the robots that take over for the staff. But anyway.
Or just in the marketing cupboard where all we used to put event stuff.
That's right, where the show materials used to go.
Yes. So we get on to the last item on our agenda. Maybe I should. No, I won't worry about a recap. People can pick it up in the show notes. I'll put the main points in the show notes. But we're on to our last agenda item, which is the song which you picked out this week. Jeff, what are we going with?
There's a song called Money Changes Everything from 1983, Cyndi Lauper. I don't know if it's, I can't remember if this was a hit or it actually seems kind of early in her boom in the 80s. But I love the line, we think that we know what we're doing. That don't mean a thing. It's all in the past now. Money changes everything. So you get that 15% decrease in your budget. Okay, that changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there are loads of songs that we could have gone for about money, and we've talked about budgets in the past, and we've had many different songs. And to answer your question, it's actually the first track on like one of her early albums. Is the research that I found out. So it's not. I don't think it's been released as a single. So it's an album track, but so people will get to get a tiny little taste of it as I try and avoid copyright laws or abusing the copyright laws in a moment. So yes, thank you very much, Jeff. And you're now going to be off on your holidays.
After you're off, I'm off, so be back in August.
In August, yeah. So thank you very much, Jeff. Enjoy your holidays, and I shall see you again in about 5 or 6 weeks' time.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Take care.
Cheers, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Jeff, and that was a little snippet of Cyndi Lauper and Money Changes Everything, a tune I was not familiar with at all. And as you heard, Jeff is off on vacation for a few more weeks, and for you Jeff fans, he'll be back on August the 13th. So that's a wrap on episode 280 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks to Jeff for his insight, and to you for putting your dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. You can find links to me, Jeff, and the reports we referred to there in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, where you can also find our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out via the website or LinkedIn. Just search Rockstar CMO. I'm sure you'll find us. But please mention that you're a listener if you'd like to connect. Coming up, I'll be chatting with Robert in our virtual bar on Friday, so that will drop on Saturday. And as Jeff starts the extended vacation, Simon Daniels will take his place in the studio next week. And I hope you join us for both of those here on Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkins-Porter hosts The Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkinsporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.